Welcome to EXI Flow Measurement's 8th video and maybe last in a series about the SFC3000 supervisory flow computer. In this 8th video we're going to look at using the SFC3000 firmware wizard. The SFC3000 uses a number of usable changeable pieces of firmware. The main processor board or display board just behind the LCD holds the main firmware, but each option board, both I/O and comms, also contain firmware. All will have two files, a boot and a main. The main is used when the flow computer is in normal operation, and the boot is used to hold the flow computer in a mode where the configuration is not loaded to allow firmware changes. The selection of which mode the flow computer is in is chosen via the bottom mode switch, but more on that later. So which version of firmware is installed in your flow computer? In video 1 we saw that each flow computer is shipped with a printout of information that shows the firmware versions at the time of shipping. This can be confirmed by looking at the system info pages on the front panel display. Press the menu button and scroll to the bottom of the list. Press system information. The first page shows the main processor or display board information. Then the button at the bottom right and the drop box can be used to check the option boards. Now you know what firmware is installed. There are two reasons why it may be necessary to change the firmware. Same as any software, bug fixes and feature or function changes. In video 5 we described what the four numbers that make up the firmware version mean. First is type, second is major, third is minor version, fourth fixes. So if a bug fix is being applied, it may be only the fourth number that changes. If the new firmware version changes any of the first three numbers, this will cause the configuration to be not loaded as the versions no longer match. Later we will see how to reload the saved configuration. Firmware files are only available directly from EXI upon request and can only be downloaded via the USB front panel. You can use the contact page on our website to request firmware files. Before making any changes to the flow computer, it's always a good idea to download and save the configuration so that the flow computer can be restored if needed. See video 6 for details. On the USB memory stick supplied with the flow computer is a software installer, SFC3000 Firmware Wizard. Run and install this software on the laptop to be used to download the new firmware. As mentioned earlier, the flow computer needs to be in boot mode to download new firmware. Turn off the flow computer, then change the position of the bottom mode switch, shown here out of the unit for clarity. Turn the flow computer back on. The alarm LEDs will flash in sync and the display will show a page similar to the system information page. Note boot mode label at the top. Connect the USB cable and run the firmware wizard. Select the flow computer and click Next. Open the S19 firmware file to be downloaded, click Next. The firmware file contains information about which boards it can be loaded into, and the firmware wizard uses this information to filter the list of available boards. Select from the list shown and click Next. The next step has two checkboxes, Download and Verify. If only Download is checked, then the wizard will download the firmware but not verify. If only Verify is checked, then the wizard will only verify if the firmware already installed matches the opened firmware file. If both are checked, then the wizard will download the new firmware and verify. Click Next. Now you will see three progress bars: Erase, Download and Verify. When the download and verify are finished, you can start again to download another firmware file or finish, which will close the wizard. Set the mode switch back to the main position and power cycle the flow computer. The flow computer will now start up using the main firmware. Assuming the main display board firmware has changed, it has caused the current configuration to be invalid. We will need to download the saved configuration file. Run a version of the Windows configuration software compatible with the new version. On the main menu click Load Setup. Open the configuration saved earlier or another and select the version of the new firmware from the list. Click the download icon and select the connected flow computer. Configuration will be downloaded into the flow computer. Although this is the last planned video in the SFC3000 series, suggestions for other work videos are welcome. Also, training courses can be tailored to suit your needs. Please see the EXI flow measurement website for more information and downloads via the contact page. Thank you for watching.